we're going to be talking about how to live as the person that you want to be. And there's no one better to talk about this topic of being the person you want to be, and vulnerability and fitness and everything else that he's experienced in his life and through his experiences in business and as an entrepreneur and a speaker and an author, as Mr. Dai Manuel. For those who don't know Dai, he's from Vancouver, so he's up north and all the way to the west. Dai Manuel is a super dad, dating his wife with a lead by example way of living and a contagious personality, who is on a mission to positively impact 1 million role models around the globe to live a functionally fit life through education, encouragement, and community. Dai is an award-winning digital thought leader and author, a distinguished Toastmaster, a TEDx speaker, an edutaining keynote speaker, a former partner and chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar retail company, and a sought-after lifestyle mentor and executive performance coach. He does it all. Dai knows the struggle of the juggle and keeping his health and happiness a priority. He models his work based on 5 F's: fitness, fun, family, faith, and finances, with an overarching roof of fun, built on a rock-solid foundation of health, nuggets of wisdom and inspiration to take action to be your best self are guaranteed when you connect with Dai. And that is the truth. Let me tell you guys, Dai is my personal mentor. And within the last 4 months, I've made more progress than I've made probably in the last few years. So Dai, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, my friend.
Oh, man. Brandon, I was going to say, is the show over now? Like, just reading the intro there, huh? I should probably shorten that down a little bit. I gotta say thank you. It's so cool to be here, especially watching how your show has evolved these last few months. It's really been remarkable. But just also yourself, just how you just show up every day. You show up, man. And I just gotta say it's very inspiring. It's motivating, but also at the same time, it's wonderful to see someone putting so much positive content out to the world. Like it's really amazing. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. And let me tell you, man, I've always found the value of having someone in your corner, right? A mentor to help you through. And you said maybe I should shorten that intro up, but you've done a lot of things, man. You've got so much experience just from when you worked in that corporate world, the business world, now being an entrepreneur and helping businesses and the speaker. Like, you're doing so many awesome things and you're putting out so many positive vibes into the world yourself. And I've heard you coin yourself in the past as a champion of change. So what does that mean to you exactly? What's a champion of change?
Well, listen, I think the easiest way to put this is like, listen, I didn't think of this. All right. Buddha said this about 2,500 some odd years ago. So, someone much wiser than me said that this too shall pass. And what he was really referring to, and when you really look into some of the works of Buddha, and believe me, I'm not a Buddhist, but I really appreciate the secular pieces that religion provide us. And what I mean by that is they're life tenets, right? Like they're common sense rules that, like, I look at the 10 Commandments. I mean, hello, those are pretty good rules, it seems like common sense to me. And when I think back to some of the teachings from Buddha and just this idea that, there's only a couple guarantees in life. And there's the joke, death and taxes, right? But all things aside, it's change. We know for absolute certain nothing stays as it is. And when we learn to accept that, we don't feel so, well, I shouldn't say this because I've had to go through some pretty tough changes in my life. And trust me, when you're going through it and you're in the heat of the change, it's not always pleasant, right? It's not always pleasant. Sometimes it's really hard. We're dealing with tough stuff. However, this too shall pass. This idea that we're going to get through it. But he was also referring to all the good stuff in life, right? Like the day that you met your future wife, right? Or husband or partner, like that first day as an entrepreneur, you made your first sale, right? The day that your first child was born, your second child, or like me, they just got their first boyfriends. And I'm like, whoa, I was like, whoa, what happened? But so you can look at change and you can push on change all you want, try to prevent it, try to fight it. But it's a losing battle. It really is.
Yeah.
And so why not flip the script, right? Why not look at our own role in the change in our own life and become a champion of change? Learn to embrace it, not fear it, learn to roll with it, and maybe even be proactive in the change of our own life. And that's really what I mean by being a champion of change. You know, like I think back, when I was 14, I was morbidly obese. I was a big kid. And it's not like I got like that overnight. No, it was a 5-year process of just doing certain poor habits again and again and again. And it compounds in a very negative way to the point I was morbidly obese. And, you know, I used to be really intimidated by the idea of change because I was afraid. I didn't know what to do or how to do it, why I was doing it, you know, but I knew I didn't want to stay as I was anymore. And to just sum this up, I think most of us will agree that when we come to that pivotal moment in our life, that absolute immense change is inevitable, we have to ask ourselves, you know, are we more afraid of not changing or are we more afraid of change? And I, often for myself, when I really think back to those moments, I was more afraid of not changing than I was of the idea of change. I was afraid of both, but I wanted to champion and be much more proactive and engaged in my own life and the changes in my life. And as intimidating as it was, it was, those changes were worth it. They weren't easy, but they were worth it. So anyways, yeah, that's my idea on champion of change.
Yeah, and I definitely want to dig into that you know, that time of your life when you were 14 years old, you were obese, you decided one day, there was a moment, which I've heard the moment, but I'd like you to talk about it again later on, because I think it's an extremely powerful moment where you decided that you were going to change that, right? You were proactive about this change. And I think about some of my most difficult moments in my life. Like I was also obese when I was growing up, from adolescence into being a teen. And finally, when I was a sophomore, junior in high school, I finally lost that weight. And I did it probably not the healthiest way. I did it through thermogenics, through really not eating nearly as much. It wasn't through activity and all the ways that we quote unquote should do things. But I remember those thermogenics I was taking actually caused me to pass out one day at work. And I worked for a Six Flags theme park. And I passed out. And I remember I came to, right? I was on the floor and I looked up, and staring at me, this is true story, staring at me was my wife, right? My now wife. I knew her. She was on my team in the retail department for Six Flags, but we never talked really. She was quiet. I was shy. I didn't really know how to talk to girls. And that opened up a conversation because our supervisor said, "Hey, Bree, you should walk Brandon to, you know, his placement today just to make sure he's going to be okay." And we made the walk and we had a conversation, and that negative change and that moment of weakness, you could say, led to me meeting and having a conversation with my now wife. And that's also how I met you. It wasn't a very different situation, but
Sure.
big career change, talking with a friend. And he's like, "Hey, you got to talk to my friend Dai." So these big changes lead to even more positive changes. So I guess my question for you would be kind of a twofold thing. Do you believe that change always happens for you in some way? And how can you be proactive when it comes to that change?
Oh man. Well, you know, we can either think that change happens to us or it happens with us, right? I guess it's really just perspective, right? As they say, is it six of one, half dozen of another, right? Like, are we getting into semantics here? And I often just invite people to do their own due diligence, you know, observe, take note of your own life. And anytime you're faced with big change or a big choice, because choice is often, when we're presented with a choice, there's usually an underlying question, right? That's presented the choice. And this might be in our subconscious, but it's probably, by the time you become aware of it, it's usually something that's creating a lot of discomfort for us in our life. Like, you know, it's not like I was thinking and when I woke up one day and I was like, "Oh, I want to lose weight. I want to get healthy." You know, like that. It just as much as it was a slow build putting the weight on, it was also a slow adoption of change, you know, like, because I was pretty change averse. Like I was very comfortable watching movies, playing video games, eating the certain foods that I was eating because it gave me that momentary boost, let's say, of dopamine, you know, because I had some real feel good endorphins attached to those very passive activities and way of living. And so making that change, it's not easy, right? It's not. I mean, let's just talk about science here, right? An object at rest, what? Wants to stay at rest, right? Like, we'll just talk about the science of it all. And very much I was like that, a body at rest, and I didn't want to move until I couldn't face the repercussions of what my daily inaction was creating. And what I mean by that is when I looked at how I felt about myself. I mean, even back then, and I am pretty grateful. I'll date myself right now. I'm 44 now. So you can imagine this is all going on, 30 years ago, 3 decades. A lot's happened in those 3 decades. But a lot of what's happened in those 3 decades is based on one decision I made at 14 years of age. Right? Like that's how impactful these life choices. And at times they may not seem like a big deal. But just like I like to think about it this way. Think about the big cruise ships. They're massive. I mean, they're ginormous, right? I mean, they're absolutely phenomenal to bear witness to. I've never been on one, but here in Vancouver, being a port city, we get the cruise lines coming through here, well, at least pre-pandemic. And I know it'll start again, but these things are massive, like just a feat of engineering. But think about this, if those things need to turn around, it's not something that is like, oh, yeah, it's like doing a 3-point turn with a car. I mean, it's, 10 seconds, you're done. These things take a long time, but also on this idea of change is, just a slight deviation of that direction that it's heading, right? Just a slight deviation, just even a half a degree. You leave it for 24 hours and they're going to be at 2 very different destinations. As much as it seems so insignificant at the time when you're making that decision to just alter the course ever so slightly, it's what happens over time that's remarkable. Because it took me 20 months to release the weight, to get into a groove of establishing this new healthy, active lifestyle. And in that, I started to learn how to actually like myself, actually not shy away from being in social settings, actually getting really excited and that maybe my life was going to be very different than the one that I imagined before making the choice to get healthy. And so that's sort of the idea on this thing of change, because it's going to happen whether we like it or not. It's just like, do I want to just feel like I'm being bulldozered over by change, or do I want to feel like maybe I'm in the driver's seat of that bulldozer and getting rid of all the old stuff in my past and channeling a new path in front of me? And so that's sort of how I like to look at that one.
Yeah, well said. And it's really interesting how the pain at that time in your life, and like you said, has shaped the way that your life looks even 30 years down the line, having gone on to work with and impact thousands of people to help them do the same thing that you were able to do, even when you were just a young teenager. It's incredible how those painful experiences then give us stories to tell and gives us lessons to give other people. And if we didn't go through any of that, then we would have no great story to tell.
That's right.
And speaking of that story to tell, recently you told a pretty amazing story on a TEDx stage, right? It's incredible where you've come after all this time. And now you gave a talk that's reaching thousands of people, and you could have talked about a lot of different things, Dai, right? The name of your talk, as you know, but for everyone listening, is Why Vulnerability is a Human Thing. And you could have talked about fitness. You could have talked about relationships, which this kind of does tie into that. But there's many things you could have talked about, but you chose vulnerability. You chose a topic that's not really discussed or on the dinner table, right? So why is it that you chose vulnerability to talk about on the TEDx stage, a goal that you had for a long time, you mentioned to me? And why, what inspired this talk?
Well, again, change sort of led to the desire to tell the story. And when I say tell the story, it's just a moment in my life, but it's a moment in my life that happened just over 11 years ago. And had I not made that decision, just like I said before, this sort of deviation of our paths, right? Had I not made that decision to go 1 year without alcohol, 11 and a half years ago, if I didn't make that decision, Brandon, you and I would have never met. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Me leaving a career of 17 years to be a full-time family and travel the world, living 2.5 years in Bali, wouldn't have happened. There's so many things that have happened this last 11 and a half years because I was willing to say, okay, I'm not happy and I don't want this life anymore. And what I mean by that is I could see pretty clearly where my decisions and choices and my daily actions were navigating me. And just to let everybody know, like, without taking away from the TEDx talk, because of course I'd love people to go watch it, but just to sort of backtrack a little here, you know, I had learned early on, as you can imagine, food became a great way to console myself, to give myself a little bit of a boost, to kind of just, it was my mini escape. And so then I made these lifestyle choices and big changes at 14, 15 years old, and released that weight, became healthy and more active. But I still believed that I was that little morbidly obese fat kid. You know, I still believe that's who I was. That's who I felt I was, even though I was making all these big changes and all of a sudden getting attention and getting invitations to hang out with certain people. And I had really low self-esteem. You know, I had a lot of negative thought patterns. And I learned pretty early on, because I started hanging around with a certain group, you know, and they would hang out, they would drink. And so, of course, I want to be accepted. And so I would then introduce alcohol. And I realized pretty quick, man, a couple drinks in, I feel completely different. I talk to people differently. I show up differently. I'm more outgoing, more gregarious, more people seem to want to hang out with me. And all of a sudden, you know, so I had gone from this food to now alcohol. And at 17, almost 18 years old, you know, that habit carried on, because then I moved across the country to Vancouver from Toronto, and I didn't know anybody. I was going to university here, and I liked the idea of a fresh start, but I didn't really have these social skills that I felt confident connecting with new people. Again, alcohol made that easy. And it just became a habit for me, Brandon. Honestly, it was just a habit, and it built. And then I met my wife, started having my kids with her, and it was just, we were just doing life. But yet this habit continued, and it continued to escalate to the point where it became more regular, more frequent, more intrusive in my life, and started to affect not only my professionally, but also personally, my relationships, especially with my family. And got to a point where my wife asked me a question, and that was the question I posed in the TEDx talk. And she asked me, Dai, are you being the type of man you'd want your daughters to marry? And that question, and realize this, just to give you some context, my daughters were both under the age of 6 at the time when that question was asked. And it was at kitchen table where we were actually discussing how it was going to be with me to leave our home and what that was going to look like. Life would look like us separated. I didn't like that idea. I didn't want that, because I knew if that happened, it's really going to get bad. Because that was really my only anchor at that time. And so right then and there, it was the weirdest thing. But change, and this is what I want people to take away from this story, this anecdote, if you will. Change happens the moment you decide it happens. That is how quickly change can start. It's literally like making an alternative choice to do something different than we've been doing it, without the expectation that results come right away. I think that's important to note. I think we're all hungry for results, right? We're really wanting results, and we think, well, if I'm going to make the effort to do this, I need to make sure I do it and I get the results. Otherwise, why am I doing it? You know, and we sort of justify that, and then we'll give ourselves these little timelines, like, oh, I've been doing this new workout routine for a week, and what? Scale hasn't moved. Oh, forget this. It doesn't work. You know, it's like, well, wait. and I knew this, you know, about change. Change takes time, but I made a switch in my mind that I was going to go 1 year without drinking and see what happened. Made the commitment to my family, made it to myself. And I learned very quickly, Brandon, in those first few weeks of making that choice, that I had a lot of these habits that were pretty deeply ingrained that were really affecting how I live my life. And that's where I just had to really grow. I had to do a lot of inner work, as they say, work on me, not on me myself professionally, but personally. And in that 1 year, everything changed, to the point that I was like, you know, after the year, my wife and I were talking about it. We were like, oh, so we're going to have a glass of wine together, celebrate. And I was like, I actually don't feel like it. I don't want it. I'm just going to keep going. And now it's like 11 and a half years later, I still haven't had any alcohol. And I feel very confident and comfortable that I could easily have a drink, but there's no desire. There's no wants. There's no need, you know? So that's just my own personal choice. I got nothing against alcohol. Okay. I don't. It's habits, right? We're all just a culmination of all those little micro habits, those little decisions and actions we do every day. That makes us up, who we are. And if you're not feeling connected with your own life and who you are right now, well, look at the little things that you do every day. maybe there's some opportunities there to make some subtle little changes so you can get to know yourself again, get back to that place where you're actually happy and excited to get out of bed first thing in the morning, to show up on a Be Better live show at 6 a.m. Vancouver time, right? Like it's awesome. Anyways, so I digress, but I think you get what I mean though, right?
Totally. I mean, dude, what an inspiring story, brother. And I commend you for making that change. And just look where it's led you, man, just to the TEDx stage, helping other people through your own stories and experiences. And I got to commend you too, man, just for being, you're a very open individual, right? You're not afraid to talk about how you feel. You're not afraid to tell personal stories. You're not afraid to really divulge, because let me tell you, man, it's if you go into Barnes and Noble, you're not going to find many books on vulnerability. It's just the reality, right? Yeah. And vulnerability, it's a very taboo thing for I'm sure women as well, but notably men, to open up about how they feel and to go into the challenges they're experiencing. And you have a whole community focused around just this, Mentorship Mondays, which I want to talk with you about. But I have a question before that, because like it even took until the last few years for me to say I love you to my dad when we hung up the phone. Right. And even now to this day, at the very end of the conversation, I always am conscious to insert, all right, I love you. And he's like, oh, all right, I love you. Bye. And then it's over. But it's always like something that has to be thought about. And it's not like I grew up with a dad who was hard to see. Like, he's a construction worker. My dad is a man's man, right? That's just construction, owns his own company, building houses up on the roof, even to this day. But he wasn't raised, number one, with a father figure. And number two, he wasn't raised in an environment where you said, I love you. And I guess, where do you believe this conditioning comes from when it comes to our lack of being, when it comes to us being afraid to really open up, not just to other people, but even to those closest to us? Where's that conditioning come from?
Well, let's, take a step back there. Well, first of all, just acknowledge what you said about your dad. Like, my father and I had a similar relationship, and it was strained at times, and really just based on both of our inaction, right? Like, he wasn't calling me, I wasn't calling him. So like it goes both ways, right? And so I own my part in that. And I know I could have done more, but I didn't feel like I had the skills nor the understanding of how to do that. How do I communicate what I want, especially with all these emotions that I have? I did. I'm someone that was very good at just suppressing the emotions until I couldn't. And then whenever it would come out in the form of anger, or as I would say, I would get bombastic, like these on a dime, the littlest of things would throw me off, and I'd be yelling at something or throwing something, like just weird, right? Just weird way of dealing with it. But I didn't know any other way to manage some of the things I was feeling internally, and how to reconcile it or manage it. Even how to, I was just very good at suppressing it. That was my natural default. It was just like, put that away. Hopefully it'll just go away. Or, in the past, I would have certain things like alcohol as a way to subdue that, sort of push it out of my mind. I'll, just get through tonight, and tomorrow's a new day, and I won't have to think about it again. And that's really hard, right? Like it over time, it just starts to affect us very negatively. Like if that becomes our normal way of dealing with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, it's not the healthiest. Okay. Just from someone that's got personal experience of being on the other side of this, I'll tell you, it doesn't feel very healthy. And I know it was affecting a lot of other areas of my life, especially my relationship with the person that is the most important person in my life, my wife, Christy, and we've been dating now for 21 years, like that's a long history. But you can imagine at 10 years in, that's when my drinking was the worst. And that was where these changes needed to start to happen. And so back to what you were asking, change is going to happen whether we like it or not, man. Brandon, like it's happening all the time, all around us. And I think when we start to just be okay with just rolling with the change, not to the point that we become submissive to change, but ourself, like being okay with our own change is what I'm trying to get to. Because I realized that after my father passed 4 years ago, there was a lot of things I was unable to say to him because I'd never been role modeled different ways of communicating my emotions. I was never given a safe environment to practice sharing my emotions. You know, this idea of being vulnerable, opening up without the fear of judgment or having what I share used against me. I mean, to me, that was like a novel idea. I mean, it sounds great, but I'm like, in practice, yeah, right. Me and my buddies, you know, we'd go to the pub and yeah, you might talk about a fight you had with your wife. By the time you got to the third round, I mean, I don't even remember what we were talking about, right? It was just a lot of surface conversations. And when I removed the alcohol, I realized, man, a lot of my relationships are very surface, especially my relationships with other men. Because I wasn't comfortable actually opening up and talking about what I was dealing with or some of the stress in my life or, you know, like just, it was weird. I just felt like I just got to do it on my own, you know, just grin and bear it, just get to work, you know, it's whatever. Everyone's dealing with their own thing. And so I knew that I wanted deeper connection with other men. And when I started to do some research, there's some pretty startling statistics out there. The Movember Project did a wonderful, they commissioned a survey a number of years ago where they surveyed men. And they asked them how many men, you know, how many friends do they have that they'd be willing to share tough conversations with, like worries about money, relationships, sex, like just those kind of really, you know, sensitive conversations. Would they feel comfortable sharing that with any other men in their life outside of their own immediate family or household? And the crazy stat was 51% of men said they had less than two or fewer friends that they would actually be considering maybe sharing some of those conversations with. But 1 in 8 said they had 0.
Wow.
Like, it's pretty startling, right? When I think back in my own life, I definitely was more on the 0 side. Like I really didn't have any other men in my life that I felt like, because they always saw me as this guy that had everything put together. And I think that's what happens at times, right? We get very good at putting up the facade. I'm going to live the Instagram life, right? Like, just everything looks great from the outside, but on the inside, especially what was going on in the day to day, it was a mess, you know, and because of me. And so this idea of vulnerability, creating a space where other men can just practice opening up without any fears of anything they share being used against them or being shared outside of that safe space. It was awesome. And it was something that I wanted. And I shared it with my friend at the time when I was living in Bali, Nick Wood. And we started to co-facilitate this weekly gathering on Monday evenings, dinner and conversation. We called it Mentorship Mondays, you know, and it was amazing. And it's still going now, almost 3 years later. And yeah, we've got a UK group, an East Coast group, a West Coast group, as well as a Southeast Asia group. And they all meet at usually 7 p.m. on Mondays in these different time zones. So it's kind of cool. On Monday, you've got 4 options. You know, as a guy, there's no excuse. It's free to come. We're doing them on Zoom right now, just based on the pandemic. And, you know, any men that are out there, please know there's an open invite. If you want to come join us, it's wonderful. And it's just something that you have to experience for yourself. And you'll realize you're not so darn alone. And probably a lot of things that you think that you're dealing with and no one will understand you, you'll be surprised. You know, that's what's made me realize that I'm not a snowflake. You know? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's especially when it comes to challenges in life, these lives that we're navigating. And yeah, it feels hard sometimes. We're challenged. We get our buttons pushed. But man, it's as soon as you open up to somebody else and you have that person say to you, gosh, me too. Me too. I totally get that. Been there. I'm dealing with that too right now. It's like, whew, okay, somebody gets me. They understand me. And they also acknowledge it's going to be okay. And sometimes that's all we need, right? That's all we need, just to have that little bit of a mental reset to then get back to work and get back to just focusing on what we're doing, which is ultimately trying to be a champion for change, not so much a victim. And yeah, anyways, I again digress. So I get off on these tangents. It's kind of like the dog in Up. You remember? Squirrel! Squirrel! You know that? You remember that? Yeah. Anyways, I'm a bit of the squirrel there. So
I love it. Man. I wanted to ask you about Mentorship Mondays anyway, and you went right into it. And
cool.
You know, there's a lot of things I love about you, Dai, but one of the main things is you take action on these problems that you see in the world, and you bring solutions to them. And I know you and Nick, you know, have co-founded Mentorship Mondays, and you run those groups and you provide people that that safe space to talk about these problems that they're going through, these challenges, as well as the great things, as well as what's going great. And I think it's great that you took action and you've continued to provide that safe space for people to grow and improve and navigate the change in their life. And the other thing I respect about you is you were able to make fitness a part of your lifestyle, right? When you made that decision, when you were 14, I'm not sure of like any fluctuations you've had in the middle there between now and then, but I'm sure there was some every now and then. Like for me in high school, I lost all that weight. And then when I started my sales job, I gained not all the weight back, but a lot of the weight back in a different way. My body was different at that point. And I realized I have to include fitness into my life if I want to feel and look the way that I want to feel. Because at the time, I took pride in a sense of not going to the gym. Like I was slim, but people would say to me like, wow, Brandon, you're really slim. Like, what do you do to work out? And I was like, oh, I don't work out. I don't go to the gym. All I do is I just watch what I eat. I eat the right amount of calories. And I had like a sense of pride, but it wasn't just that. There was a sense of pain. An emotion of pain that I associated with working out, as if I'd be sacrificing something like time and whatever it might be. The real reason I later discovered was I didn't know how to include fitness into my lifestyle until a friend of mine invited me to the gym and showed me a few workouts. The gym to me was like this scary place of all these lunks and these big dudes going to lift big weights. And I was just terrified of the thought of walking into one of those gyms and actually including fitness as a part of my life. And a lot of people, I'm sure, share that pain and share that uncertainty. But you've taken a functionally fit lifestyle and you've actually included an acronym in there, FUN-ctionally fit. So what does a functionally fit lifestyle look like to you? And how have you been able to maintain this level of fitness throughout your life?
Well, thanks. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, fitness is interesting, right? Like I think a lot of us recognize that health is important, and it is more often than not taken for granted, right? I know I took my health for granted at times, and especially, I learned that pretty early on because I developed asthma and a lot of joint problems, and just, I had those issues when I was obese at 14, which is weird, right? I'm 14, like, gosh, man, this body's still under warranty, isn't it? What's going on? What's up here? And, once I became healthy and started to move my body with a little bit of purpose every day. And what I mean by that is I just started moving my body to create a positive response. And for me, that was sweating. I knew if I was sweating, I was working. And if I was working, good things were going to happen. That was sort of my idea. So it was like, if I could sweat every day, awesome. And I'm not saying, yes, back then I would have been more of the mindset that let's just go for a workout. So, a casual bike ride with some buddies would be who can go faster, who can go up the hill quicker, but that's also the age, being in my teen years and even into my 20s. But as things started to shift, which in my life and my lifestyle, fitness was still a part of it. But the way I looked at fitness changed to the point that, especially as I got into my late 20s, early 30s, and going through this big shift of starting to do this inner work, I realized that, fitness is a direct tie-in to my health and well-being. What I mean by that is it has the greatest amount of influence on my health, mental health, physical health, spiritual health. I just realized that this one thing, this activity every day, by doing it, made me feel better in so many other areas of my life. And when you really start to accept that, like if fitness becomes that kind of a piece for us, it's really hard not to include it every day, whether that be even just getting out for a nice walk outside in nature, or the seawall here that we have in Vancouver. It's beautiful. We like to go out for a walk, my wife and I, and connect and talk and get some steps in, get some activity in. And it doesn't have to be something that's really hard nor hard to do. And the old adage, no pain, no gain, that's garbage. Okay. But my 20-something-year-old brain at the time used to believe that. And it wasn't until I started to age and started to change in life and just change in desires and wants and needs, and that I started to look at my fitness also needed to adapt and evolve. So this idea of functionally fit life, fun being the main one, is when I use alliteration of the 5S when I wrote a book called The Whole Life Fitness Manifesto. And in it, I teach people how to leverage literally 2% of every 24 hours to optimize our health and well-being in the areas of body, mind, and spirit. So 2% is only 30 minutes. So in case people are trying to do the math there, 2% of 24 hours, what is that? It's 30 minutes. And it's 15 minutes of movement with purpose. So you're moving your body every day, 5 minutes of mindful meditation, 10 minutes of personal development. That just means taking positive ideas, concepts. That could be TED Talks. It could be a wonderful live interview like the Be Better interview series, right? Like whatever it is, feed your mind with something positive for minimally 10 minutes a day. And people are like, wow, only 30 minutes a day. That's all I got to do. And I'm like, it's the least that you're worth. Like, wow, what's your health and well-being worth to you? You know, like, because no one else is going to make it a priority except ourselves. And so I'm looking for the lowest barrier of entry to get people started. I often refer to my program as more of a gateway program into creating the lifestyle that we want. But we have to trust the process and just keep showing up for ourselves in our own life. I know it sounds like, wow, well, Dai, you make it sound really easy. And I'm like, well, it actually is simple in design. But simple doesn't mean easy, because it still involves us doing some work, still involves us changing some habits and trusting that if we do that every day and keep showing up and being the person that we want to be and acting as that person right now, rather than thinking, well, hopefully I'll be like that in a couple of years. No, just start living like that right now. Ask yourself, that person that I envision myself being, I see myself as someone that's healthy, vibrant, loving life, connected with their friends and family, and just feeling good, you know, feeling really good that I'm living the life I want to be living. To get into that frame of mind, well, just start being that person right now and ask yourself, who is that person? What do their habits look like? And just trust the process. Just start doing those things. You're like, that's it? I'm like, it's a good place to start. You know, like, why not? You know, like, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Let me put it this way, Brandon. I think this will sum up everything that we're saying here. When we look at our own lives and we look at the things we do every day, I'm all about doing things that we'll never regret doing. And what I mean by that is, you know, with some of my clients, right, I'll encourage them to start eating one big green salad a day. You know, just a big green salad, something that you're really proud of. You know, like those, make a beautiful salad, put lots of greens in there, lots of veg, maybe some lean protein on top. Like I love cedar plank salmon, right? So put some salmon on there, but a beautiful salad that you're proud of. You know, you'd be like, whoa, this is Instagram worthy, right? It's like, ooh, I love this. I'm proud of this salad, this meal I'm about to eat. And then I encourage them to eat it. I've never had someone at the end of the day message me and say, you know what, Dai, I really regret eating a salad for lunch. Like I have yet to receive that. Same goes with working out. It's like, I've never had someone message me and say, Dai, I'm really, you know, I regret working out today. I've never heard that ever. Now I've heard people message me and say, I really regret the workout you programmed for me today. Right. But always, you know, in a joking fashion. But think about it, right? Usually the decisions that we instinctively know are good for us, we never regret doing those things. In fact, we feel the opposite. We feel pride. We feel self-love. We feel like good, you know, for doing those things. So just do more of those. Like that's all I'm saying. Like just do more of those, whatever that is. Just even if it's just one thing a day, it's a great place to start, you know, and just see what's possible. Just see what's possible. It's remarkable. As soon as you get out of your own way and you just start leaning in and trusting the process and doing those little things, holy smokes, good things happen. They just happen. I've yet to see it not happen. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so you develop massive momentum, and I love what you said about projecting forward of who it is you want to be. I mean, this show, the name of this is How to Live as the Person You Want to Be. If you first have to determine who that is, right? You have to determine, well, who is it that I want to be, right? How do I want to feel? How do I want to look? Who are the people I want to spend my time around? All these different things. And then you take that vision and you deconstruct it into what you said, the rituals and the habits that you do every single day in order to make that vision a reality. And like you said, it's so important what you said, man. Just, you have to trust the process. I used to train all my new salespeople. Listen, this is the process, right? And you got to trust that it's going to work for you, right? This is what all the successful people are doing. While you might not see results at the beginning, maybe even for the first week, 2 weeks, a month, you will see the results. You just have to trust the process. And you mentioned a lot of great things there with the 2% of every 24 hours, just intentionally moving, with eating the big green salad. Now, I know there's someone watching who was in the same position I was, and maybe where you were when you were 14, who is saying to themselves, I want to make a change. I know the person I want to be, right? But what is one thing that I could do right now in order to make a radical difference with my body, with my physicality? What else, I should say, because you've already mentioned a few things. What else would you recommend to somebody who wants to make that radical difference with their fitness and they commit to beginning now?
Well, great question. And, I think at certain periods in my life where I've made some pretty big changes, I came to a point where I asked myself a series of questions and just to sort of try to gain clarity. I mean, what's the point of questions, right? It's hopefully to gain some clarity. And once we become clearer, more assured of ourselves that we're at least facing the direction that we want to be going now, based on what we think we want. As I say, think, because it's I want people to internalize the want to the point where it's like, I feel I want this. And this is like not just something that I think I want. It's like, this is a full body experience. I want this, I want this for my life. And you got to create some space for ourselves to even think about that. It's like, if I ask you, Brandon, like, hey, what do you want for your life? What do you want for life? Like, for relationships, like it puts us sort of in the driver's seat real quickly. It makes us now the architects of our own life, this life by design concepts. It's happening. It happens in our life, but are we passive or are we proactive? Like, are we sort of just going along for a ride and just whatever happens and be like, okay, fair enough. Or do you want to get more proactive? Recognize that this is where I want to go. Create some direction, some intentionality with that. And when I think back to if someone's just getting started, I know it's intimidating. I know it is. And right now, and when I think back to myself, like, I didn't have the full confidence in myself that I can navigate the changes. And because of that, at that time, I knew it was going to be really important for me to find people that could support me. And, now I would say, to hold me accountable, sure. But more than just accountability was also just to have people there that would understand what I was going through, could actually empathize, not sympathize, empathize, relate to the things that I'm going through, because they too are either on a journey with a similar path or have maybe already achieved what I'm looking to achieve. But regardless, I'm looking for a community to belong to have a coach, have a mentor. When I think back to the biggest changes I've navigated, those have been the pieces that have kept me going. Let's just put it that way. Do you know what I mean, Brandon? Like, it's fine to get started. I think a lot of us are really good at getting started. It's just that keeping it going is where we feel challenged. We have our first little hiccup. Maybe we roll an ankle. We're like, oh, shoot, I just rolled my ankle. I'm going to have to take a week off. That turns into 2, turns into 3, turns into a month, right? Like, sometimes these littlest of things can throw us right back into our old patterns again. And sometimes we're not so aware of that. We give ourselves the out, where I'd like to invite people, find a community, find a coach, a mentor, someone that can be there to be your cheerleader, but also to be there to help you navigate, especially the early stages of that journey. Because it takes time to develop, like I said, 20 months for me, to develop the lifestyle, to get to a point where I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to go work out tomorrow, I'm going to eat this food. Like, to get to a point where I just started living my life and I wasn't thinking about anything. It's just those now became just regular everyday habits. It was just part of who I was. No thoughts anymore. I went right into the subconscious. I just did. As I say, I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just doing. I was being. I was living. And that's where I want people to get, to arrive there. And there's no fixed timeline on this. But it doesn't mean you stop going at least the direction that you want to go. But having that community there will definitely support you along the way. And it's a lot more fun to do this stuff together with friends and other people than it is to do by ourselves, right? Like, yeah. I mean, it is. It's nice. It's fun. We are social beings, right down to our DNA. We're social. Some people, like, I'm naturally introverted, but I work as an extrovert. I do a lot of things that require me to be extroverted. But my natural default is to be introverted, to hang out
Same.
with my family, to chill, to just be somewhat private. But I've also realized that I have a mission. I have a message I want to share. I want to impact people. So it's a choice. Every day I choose to put myself out there, choose to show up in a certain way, choose to support people, not only in my communities, but outside of my communities, because that's what I feel like I'm here to do. And I invite people, what is it that you are here to do? As the Japanese say, what's your ikigai? What is the reason you get up every morning? Because with a strong enough why, we can endure any how, as Nishi said, right? Like it's powerful. And it's so true. It's so true. But you just got to get started. Just got to get started. That's all. First step. I know it's cliche, right? It is cliche. It's just the first step of any journey is the hardest step. And I always like to tell people that first step is 100% improvement over where we were. But it diminishing returns after the fact, right? With every step we continue, it's great. We still see progress, but it's never as impactful as that very first thing that we do, that first action that we take. So just take it and get started, and watch out. Just watch out.
What a beautiful answer. Okay, speaking of that mission, what's next for Dai Manuel?
Well, holy, Brandon. What is next for me? Well, I've got a couple of little projects on the go, and I've actually been, to be perfectly honest, it was a 7-month process to prep for the TEDx talk. I had no idea it was going to be so lengthy. I'd heard from friends that have done talks that it's quite the investment of time and energy, mental space especially. And from the time that I was invited to submit a concept and applied to potentially be a speaker to the point that I stood on that red dot, it was almost 7 months. And once I got to the point and I did it, it was like, whoa. And I was riding on a bit of a high for about a month, and then I crashed pretty hard. So May was a crash month for me. Like, I was just like, I felt myself being very introverted, not doing a lot, not even showing up on social media very much, doing the bare minimums, because I wasn't feeling inspired or motivated to do it. I felt I just needed to recover. I needed some downtime now. And so now that we're into June, and I'm starting to feel much more focused and excited, and I've got a lot of ideas that I'm sort of working through right now, but I have some ideas for some events as well as some future talks. I'd like to do another TEDx talk, another book, and so I've got a couple ideas on the go right now, and I'm really excited to see how those unfold for the next half of the year. Because can you believe it? We're just past the halfway mark. Like,
incredible.
It's nuts, man. It's nuts. Like I'm still blown away how fast this year's going by. And which sounds funny because it's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
it's just time. We're all dealing with the same stuff, but I'll just tell you, when you're in flow, you just lose track of it, right? You just sort of lose track. So yeah, that's sort of what's on the immediate next horizon. Beyond that, man, you have to ask me later. Yeah.
Awesome. Everyone, I invite you to go watch Dai's TED Talk on YouTube. Type in Dai Manuel. It'll pop right up. It's the first video that pops up. If it's not, the name of the talk is Why Vulnerability is a Human Thing. Check out the talk. It's absolutely incredible. Other than the TEDx talk, Dai, where can we find and connect with you so we can keep up with all these awesome things that you're working on and continuing to do?
Well, thanks, Brandon. Well, my website, daimanuel.com, DAIMANUEL.com. Over 1,800 articles I've put out there over the last 14 years. So there's plenty of content, all geared to helping people live their best life. That's it. So I always say it's a wonderful place to begin, and I got lots of free resources there. Now, outside of that, if you want to have a conversation, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And all you got to do is spell my name. You will find me. It's the nice thing of having a very unique name. It was unencumbered when all these social platforms started popping up. It was like, oh, I'll just go for my name. Wow, look, it's available. Hello.
Awesome.
And it was funny because my parents, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I was like, why did they give me this name? Then Google came around and SEO, and I was like, yes, my parents were visionaries. So as Brandon said, you type my name in, even if you got it misspelled, Google knows well enough now that they'll often populate with the correct spelling. and I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. So I always say, just write and say, hey, I heard you on Brandon's show. This is why I'm on this planet. I would love to hear that. Why are you here? Why do you feel that you're here, and what are you meant to be doing? Because I love hearing those stories. I know, Brandon, you get excited about those conversations too. I mean, they're so much fun, right? So I always invite people. That's the best way to get something started.
Awesome. Very cool. DaiManuel.com, DaiManuel.com. Go check him out. Watch his TEDx talk. Dai, I commend you for a lot of things. I commend you for being an incredible human being. I commend you for your amazing energy, for your mission. And I also thank you for helping to personally guide me over these last 4 or 5 months now. So thank you very much.
Brandon, thank you, man. I absolutely loved our conversation this morning. I've been looking forward to this for the last few weeks since we talked about doing it. And I just got to listen. I absolutely love everything you're putting out there, especially with the upcoming event that you're planning. I don't know. Have you told these people what you were working on? I think it's pretty damn cool.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Be Extraordinary Masterclass, 24th, Thursday the 24th, 11 a.m.
I'll be there. I can't wait. And I'm just stoked. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to connect with your community. And listen, just keep spreading the good vibes, because there's enough of the negative ones out there. We don't need to add to that pile anymore. We need to have an offset. And I love seeing how much you're offsetting that space. So thank you for being a champion of change for all of us, and showing us what's possible, and sharing these stories on your platform. I just think it's amazing. So yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that, brother. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Everyone watching, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for watching. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.